we're very pleased this morning to have some folks from the Nebraska Bankers Association with us. And we have the chair of the Bankers Association with us, Kristie Holoch. She's the CEO over at Cornerstone Bank in York. And we have the chair-elect, David Dannehl. He's with president of First State Bank in Loomis. He's in Craig Larson's country. So we welcome you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
First of all, let's just talk about the state of the economy and how it's affecting banking here in our state. I mean, our economy is obviously down from what it's been in past years. How is it impacting banking, Kristie?
Well, I think it impacts all of us because it affects all of us, and with all of our customers, whether they're a direct ag producer or they're related to those industries, whether they sell equipment, seed, or whatever, it does affect all of us. It's something that we watch very carefully as bankers, and we work very closely and want to work closely with our producers and our borrowers, and we stay in close contact with them, and we've been having these conversations over the past few years. You can see it all coming, so it's something that we're not overly concerned, but we're very cautious and aware of everything.
So are you, she mentioned cautious, are you cautious about loaning money to people that with these depressed prices or maybe just are not able to pay you back for what they did the year before? How many years do you go before you say, wait a minute, guys?
Well, that's a tricky question to answer because it kind of does depend on each borrower that you're working with, because each one has a different financial circumstance but ag bankers tend to be cautious in general. They tend to be conservative, much like their producers are. And when you talk about an industry that's a $22 billion contributor to the state's economy on an annual basis, certainly agriculture is what drives our state. And when you get into a year like we're having, or a couple of years in a row where commodity prices are down, certainly what you want to see with a lot of your producers is diversity in their operations. For example, the corn and soybean market isn't, particularly the corn market right now isn't the best, but certainly the first 9 months of this year, our cattle feeders have had a nice rebound from where things were a year and a half ago. So again, diversity is important, but we're still making, I think in Nebraska, $12.5 billion were lent last year in the state to finance ag production and farm real estate. So certainly banks lead the charge when it comes to financing ag operations, and for the majority of our customers, we look to stay involved. There may be a few tough decisions that have to be made, but that's no different than has been in this industry for as long as banking's been around.
Kristie, this isn't anything like the mid-'80s, is it, or the late '80s, where we had the big crisis and banks failed?
No, I don't believe it is at all, and I think bankers in general learned from what happened in the 80s, and I think a lot of that, say the land prices and people were just overextended, and I think we all learned from that, everyone did, and so I think we going forward through the 90s and forward, we've been all careful about the limits we put on lending, or how much they should put into, say, for land prices, and how much we'll loan versus how much it's per acre. So I don't think it's going to be that at all. I think we're all much better because of what probably happened in the 80s.
All right. Cybersecurity, let's talk about that with Equifax and all that stuff. You guys in the banking industry, especially state bankers, increasing your security to make sure the data is secure and protected in your operations?
Well, certainly protecting our customers' information is our number one priority, maintaining their confidential information and having systems in place to both protect and detect whenever there is an attempt at an intrusion. This is obviously a problem that is probably not going to go away. There's increased attempts across the nation as far as different not just banking, but any type of organization that's IT based, which most are anymore. People are trying to hack in, if you will, and to prove that they can compromise someone's data. And certainly this Equifax issue is a big deal, because 1 in 2 Americans has been affected by that, or should be affected by that, apparently, by the statistics that they're putting out. And so for those that haven't, I would urge your listeners to make sure they go to Equifax's website and go through their steps to see if they have, to check their own information to see if it was part of the compromise or not. I know I have already done it, and my entire family has.
Okay.
Another thing you can do with that too is we've been advised is, and we've been telling our customers this too, go to each individual credit reporting agency that, not just the Equifax, and just put some kind of maybe fraud control. They have different steps that you can go through to watch that for you, and to make sure someone doesn't have your identity to try to get a loan or a credit card or something like that in your name. So there are steps that we all can take and should take.
Okay. So, 1 in 2, that's an amazing figure.
It is.
Yeah, scary.
It is. It's very scary.
One of my there's 5 in my family, and one of them was part of it. So the other 4 of us were apparently okay. So
Well, you're pretty good, 1 in 5.
Yeah, we're below the statistics, but it can happen to anyone. So, and you didn't maybe have anything to just because you had some information that was stored on their website from an online transaction you might have done, or a credit card you applied for 5-10 years ago. So, and what all they gained access to is certainly still unknown at this point, but it's a big concern.
Yeah.
I think fraud in general is just a big concern. I just had a call from my credit card company Sunday, and there was some unauthorized transactions, so I have to get a new card. Well, I appreciated that call, but I think it's just we all just have to be aware of what we do.
Yeah. Okay. No question.
Certainly, another thing many of your listeners should and can and should do is to look at their credentials that they use to set up their user ID and passwords. Particularly taking a look at how complex they are. The ABCD 1 2 3 4 is not a good idea for a password, or certain examples like that. So making sure they've got very complex, unique user IDs and passwords would be certainly one of many steps that they can take to make it more difficult for a compromise to take place.
And change them.
Change them, yes.
Yeah. You almost have to have a book and
You do.
a book
You do.
with all your passwords
Yep.
to change them, don't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we have one at home, and it's pages and pages.
Spreadsheet, yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Congress a little bit and the struggles with health care. It doesn't look like we're going to have a health care bill. Some of the other things, they're looking at income tax reform, but tax reform in some way, but we still haven't. I mean, the fact that Congress hasn't been able to move on some of these key issues, does that bother you guys at all?
It does. It's frustrating. You would think that they would, especially the health care, they've been talking for years that they want to, overturn or get something different in there, but they didn't have anything ready. So just the fact that they can't agree or come up with something that would satisfy all Americans, and it would be better. But I think just what we've seen, when traveling back to Washington, D.C., and they just are... They just are sometimes unrealistic with what goes on in the rest of the world or the rest of America, and so hopefully, we're hopeful that we can see some changes that will benefit consumers and will help them and not have a lot of unnecessary burdens put on all of us.
Yeah, it seems like all they know is that one little area in the Beltway. And that doesn't even come close to being an example of what goes on in all across America, especially when you look at how big the Midwest is.
Certainly.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's got to just frustrate the heck out of you.
Well, it does, and I know our population base out here isn't anywhere near what the areas that they seem to be more focused is, but still, there's representation that we don't want to be forgotten, and so parts of our when we're in DC and trying to be the voice in our positions for Nebraska bankers and what's good for Nebraskans in general. We just hope they listen and keep us in mind. But certainly, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage where we are a small part of the big picture, and it's frustrating sometimes when that's the type of attention we get. And
yeah. Are you maybe one of the things is with the Trump administration is possibly they will appoint some people to some of these agencies that might be a little better than what you had before?
That's what we're hopeful. We think that Trump has different ways of communicating, I guess, that sometimes we all find a little frustrating. But I think a lot of it is, I think he understands business and business people and how, and wants to see some action. I think goes slower than he would like sometimes, but he's been very open to visiting with bankers from across the country and wanting to change some things, and also maybe change some heads of some of these agencies and maybe get rid of some of that, or help our customers with some of the unnecessary burdens and some of the questions. When a customer comes in a bank, we have to almost be invasive with some of the questions we ask them because of something that the regulators have passed down on us due to Congress. So there's a lot that I think we are very hopeful that things can be changed.
He's been vocal about pushing for some regulatory relief, and that's certainly something that's viewed upon very positively by bankers, not just in Nebraska but nationwide. And a lot of these undue regulations, they don't realize when they're passed, what they do to many of our banks is they cause us to take the focus away from what's most important, and that's our customers, and listening to their needs and attending to them. When, as Chris said, we're focused more on filling out these forms or making sure every I or T is dotted and crossed because of some new regulatory change that is increasing the paperwork that's needed to do a house loan, for example. So it's encouraging to see that President Trump has been vocal about initiating some things to hopefully provide some regulatory relief for banks.
Okay. As you pass the torch, Chris, over here to Dave, is there anything in particular that you guys want to focus on here in the next year?
Well, I think just getting out and visiting with the bankers, which is what we're doing now. We're traveling the state over the next 2 weeks, and we're stopping in and we have meetings, scheduled that they'll come to, but we are stopping in, visiting with the banks around as we can travel. And there's more than just us here representing the Bankers Association. And staying in communication. We talked to some people yesterday, and we really got some insight of what's going on in their area of the state. And so I think just staying in good communication. Our association does a great job with training our bankers and training, keeping everyone up to date on what's going on regulatory wise. So I think just focusing on that, and it's been, for me, it's been a great experience to have this role, and I appreciate it. And I know Dave will do a great job also in getting out, and we just keep things going. But the staff of the NBA really is what holds us all together. So they do a great job.
Okay. So, Dave, that's the big thing, is just communicate, right?
Absolutely. And it's certainly a humbling honor and a privilege to be in this position to represent the 187 member banks that are members of the Nebraska Bankers Association. The majority of the banks in the state are, and one of the NBA does so many great things, but they represent. We have banks that are many, many billions in assets and size, and we have a bank that's 10 million in assets and size. So there's a big difference between the biggest and smallest, and the NBA does an excellent job of representing and listening to the needs of all banks, no matter how large or small, and in all geographic areas across the state.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for stopping.